What if one act of kindness in the rain could change your entire life forever? Jasper Tate never imagined that stopping to help a stranded pregnant woman would cost him his job. But what he did not know was that the woman he rescued was actually the CEO of the company that just fired him, and she was about to turn his world completely upside down in ways he could never have predicted. Because sometimes the universe has a way of rewarding those who choose compassion over convenience, and what happens next will restore your faith in humanity, as this single father discovers that one moment of selflessness can lead to opportunities beyond his wildest dreams, when the very person he helped becomes the one person with the power to change everything. The rain hammered down on the windshield like thousands of tiny fists as Jasper Tate gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles turning white against the worn leather. His ancient sedan coughed and sputtered through the downpour, and he glanced nervously at the clock on the dashboard. 7:15 in the morning, and he was already cutting it close for his shift at Vilmont Industries, the massive manufacturing plant where he had worked for the past 3 years loading boxes and operating forklifts in the shipping department. His supervisor Marcus had made it crystal clear last week that one more tardiness would result in immediate termination. No exceptions, no second chances, and Jasper could not afford to lose this job, not with his 7-year-old daughter Emma, depending on him for everything since her mother had walked out on them 2 years ago, leaving nothing but a note on the kitchen table and a gaping hole in their lives. He pressed harder on the accelerator, trying to make up time even as the rain intensified, turning the road ahead into a blurry mess of gray, and he was mentally calculating whether he could still make it on time when he saw her, a figure on the side of the road waving frantically beside a car with its hazard lights blinking weakly through the storm. Jasper's first instinct was to keep driving to pretend he had not seen anything, because stopping would definitely make him late. But as he drew closer, he could see it was a woman, and she was clearly pregnant, very pregnant, and she looked desperate. Her clothes were soaked through, and she was holding her belly with one hand while waving with the other. Everything in Jasper's practical mind screamed at him to keep going, to prioritize his job and his daughter's security. But something deeper, something fundamental in his character, made his foot move from the gas pedal to the brake, and before he could talk himself out of it, he was pulling over to the side of the road, his tires splashing through puddles as he came to a stop about 20 feet ahead of the stranded vehicle. He grabbed the emergency umbrella from his back seat and climbed out into the deluge, immediately feeling the cold rain soak through his work uniform as he jogged back toward the woman. "Are you okay?" he called out over the sound of the storm, and as he got closer he could see she was well dressed, even in her rain-soaked state. Her clothes spoke of quality and expense, and her face, though twisted with discomfort and worry, had the kind of refined features that suggested she was not accustomed to being stranded on the side of highways in thunderstorms. "My car just died," she shouted back, her voice strained, "and I think I am having contractions. I need to get to the hospital, but my phone is dead and I cannot get a signal anyway. And you are the first person to stop in 20 minutes. Jasper did not hesitate. He held the umbrella over her as best he could, though it was almost useless in the sideways rain, and helped her toward his car, which suddenly seemed even more shabby and inadequate than usual. But she did not complain. She just let him guide her carefully to the passenger seat, and once she was settled, he ran back to lock her vehicle and then climbed into the driver's seat, water dripping from his hair and clothes. "Which hospital?" he asked, starting the engine and praying his car would not choose this moment to give up on him. "St. Mary's Medical Center," she said through gritted teeth, her hands wrapped around her belly. "It is about 15 minutes from here if the traffic is not too bad." Jasper nodded and pulled back onto the road, pushing his car as fast as he dared in the terrible conditions, and he tried not to think about the time or about Marcus waiting at the plant with a termination notice already prepared in his mind. Instead, he focused on getting this woman to safety, on making sure she and her baby would be okay, because that was what mattered, right? Now, not his job, not his fears about the future, just this moment and this person who needed help. "What is your name?" she asked after a few minutes, her breathing coming in short, controlled bursts. "Jasper. Jasper Tate," he replied, keeping his eyes on the road. "I am Helen Cross," she said, and then she gasped and grabbed the door handle as another contraction hit. "Just breathe," Jasper said with more confidence than he felt, trying to remember anything he had learned from when his ex-wife was pregnant. With Emma, just focus on your breathing, we will get you there. Helen nodded and followed his advice, and Jasper found himself talking to her to keep her calm, telling her about Emma and how she loved drawing pictures of princesses and dragons and how she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up, even though she was terrified of their neighbor's small dog. And Helen laughed despite her pain and told him he sounded like a wonderful father. And Jasper felt a warm glow in his chest, despite the cold rain and the growing certainty that he was about to lose his job. The hospital finally came into view, and Jasper pulled up to the emergency entrance, where medical staff were already moving with stretchers and wheelchairs. He jumped out and ran around to help Helen out of the car, and a nurse immediately took over, guiding her toward the doors. But Helen turned back for just a moment. "Thank you, Jasper," she said, her eyes meeting his with genuine gratitude. "Thank you for stopping." He nodded. "It is going to be okay." He called after her, and then she was gone through the automatic doors, and he was left standing in the rain next to his idling car alone again. Jasper climbed back into his car and checked the time. 7:58. He was supposed to clock in at 8, and the plant was still a good 12 minutes away. Even if he drove recklessly, which he could not afford to do in this weather, his heart sank as he realized there was absolutely no way he would make it on time. Marcus would be furious, and his threat had been explicit: one more late arrival, and Jasper was finished. But even as dread settled in his stomach like a stone, he could not bring himself to regret stopping. He had done the right thing, and whatever consequences came from that, he would have to face them. He arrived at Vilmont Industries at 8:17, and the parking lot was already full. The massive gray building loomed before him like a fortress, and inside those walls, his fate was already sealed. He jogged through the rain to the employee entrance, swiped his badge, and headed directly to the shipping department where Marcus was waiting. His arms crossed and his face set in a grim expression. "Tate, you are 17 minutes late," Marcus said, his voice flat and official. "And you know what that means after your final warning last week? I have no choice but to terminate your employment, effective immediately. Please turn in your badge and clean out your locker. You will receive your final paycheck, according to company policy." Jasper felt the words hit him like physical blows, but he kept his composure. "I understand," he said quietly, "but can I at least explain why I was late? I helped a pregnant woman get to the hospital. She was stranded in the storm," and Marcus held up a hand. "I do not need to hear excuses. Tate, the rules are the rules, and you have had multiple warnings about punctuality. This company cannot make exceptions no matter how good your story is. Now please turn in your badge." The next hour passed in a blur as Jasper cleaned out his locker, collecting the few personal items he had kept there: a photo of Emma, a coffee mug she had decorated for him, and a jacket he kept for cold days in the warehouse. Other workers gave him sympathetic looks, but no one said anything because everyone knew that Vilmont Industries was not a place where compassion trumped policy. This was a corporation driven by metrics and schedules, and there was no room for human circumstances, no matter how compelling. Jasper drove home in a daze, the rain still falling, though less intensely now, and he tried to figure out how he was going to tell Emma that Daddy had lost his job again. She was too young to understand the full implications, but she was smart enough to sense when things were bad, and he did not want her to worry. But worry was inevitable now because their savings were minimal, and jobs were not easy to come by in this economy, especially for someone without a college degree, whose resume consisted mostly of manual labor and warehouse work. He spent the rest of the day sending out applications online to every job posting he could find: warehouse positions, retail stores, security companies, anything that might provide a steady paycheck and health insurance. And as he typed and clicked and filled out endless forms, he told himself that something would work out, that the universe would not punish him for doing a good deed. But the rational part of his brain knew better. Good deeds did not pay rent, and kindness did not put food on the table. That evening when he picked Emma up from school, he kept a smile on his face and pretended everything was fine, and she chattered happily about her day, about the story her teacher had read and the game she had played at recess, and Jasper listened and nodded, and felt his heart break a little more because he had no idea how long he could maintain this illusion of stability. Meanwhile, across the city, Helen Cross was lying in a hospital bed holding her newborn daughter, and feeling a mix of exhaustion and overwhelming joy the delivery had gone smoothly, thanks in large part to getting to the hospital when she did. And, as she looked down at the tiny, perfect face of her child, she found herself thinking about the man who had made it all possible. Jasper Tate, who had stopped when no one else would, who had sacrificed his own interests to help a stranger. Helen was not accustomed to such selflessness in her world as the CEO of Vilmont Industries. She was surrounded by people who wanted something from her, who calculated every interaction in terms of advantage and benefit. But Jasper had asked for nothing, had expected nothing, and had driven away without even leaving his contact information, so she could thank him properly. And that kind of genuine goodness was rare, precious even, and Helen wanted to find a way to acknowledge it. The next morning after being discharged from the hospital, Helen went directly to her office on the top floor of the Vilmont Industries headquarters, building her assistant. Margaret looked shocked to see her, Miss Cross. "You should be at home resting," Margaret said, standing up from her desk with alarm on her face. "You just had a baby yesterday." "I know," Helen said with a slight smile. "But there is something I need to look into. Is there a Jasper Tate who works here, in any department?" Margaret blinked in surprise, then turned to her computer and began typing. After a moment she looked up. "Yes, there is a Jasper Tate who worked in shipping and receiving, but according to the system he was terminated yesterday morning for attendance violations." Helen felt something cold settle in her chest. "Terminated yesterday morning," she repeated slowly. "The same day I was in labor." "Yes, ma'am," Margaret confirmed, looking confused. "Is there a problem?" Helen did not answer immediately. Instead, she picked up her phone and called down to the Human Resources Department. "I need the complete personnel file for Jasper Tate, formerly of Shipping and Receiving, brought to my office immediately, along with whoever processed his termination." Within 15 minutes, Helen was reviewing Jasper's file spread. Across her desk and sitting across from her was Daniel Morrison, the HR director, who looked distinctly uncomfortable under her scrutiny. "Walk me through this," Helen said, her voice controlled, but with an edge that made Morrison shift in his seat. "Jasper Tate was terminated for being 17 minutes late on a day when he had already received a final warning. Is that correct?" "Yes, Miss Cross," Morrison said, nodding. "That is our standard policy. Employees receive verbal and written warnings for attendance issues, and after a final warning, any subsequent violation results in automatic termination. It is applied consistently across all departments." "And did anyone ask why he was late that particular morning?" Helen pressed. Morrison hesitated. "Well, his supervisor, Marcus Brennan, noted that Mr. Tate attempted to provide an explanation about helping someone. But company policy is clear, that personal circumstances do not override attendance requirements. We cannot make exceptions, because then everyone would. So, no one actually listened to his explanation." Helen interrupted, her eyes sharp. "No one investigated whether there might have been legitimate extenuating circumstances." Morrison looked uncomfortable. "Company policy states." "That I know what company policy states," Helen said, cutting him off again. "I wrote most of them, but policies are meant to serve justice and common sense, not replace them. Jasper Tate was late because he stopped to help a pregnant woman in distress get to the hospital. That woman was me. And if he had not stopped when he did, my daughter and I could have faced serious complications, and for that act of basic human decency, he was fired from this company. The same company that I run." Morrison's face went pale. I had no idea. Miss Cross, I am so sorry if we had known. You should not need to know who the person was." Helen said, her voice firm. "The point is that an employee made a choice to help someone in a medical emergency and was punished for it. What does that say about our company culture? What does that say about our values?" Morrison had no answer, and Helen continued, "This termination is unacceptable. I want Jasper Tate reinstated immediately with full back pay for the days he has missed, and I want a formal apology from this company for how he was treated." "Yes, Miss Cross, of course," Morrison said quickly, standing up. "I will process the reinstatement right away." Helen held up a hand. "Actually, no," she said, her mind working through an idea that had been forming since she first learned of Jasper's termination. "I have a better idea. Jasper Tate demonstrated exceptional character and judgment in a crisis situation. Those are exactly the qualities I need in my inner circle. I am creating a new position, executive assistant to the CEO, and I want Jasper Tate offered that role. Morrison looked stunned, but Miss Cross, he is a warehouse worker. He has no experience in executive administration. Then he will learn, Helen said with finality. Some things can be taught, but character and integrity are inherent. You cannot train someone to stop and help a stranger when it costs them something significant. Jasper Tate has already proven he has those qualities, and I value that more than any resume. So make it happen. Contact him today and extend the offer with a salary commensurate with the position. Yes, Miss Cross, Morrison said, still looking shell-shocked. I will take care of it immediately. As Morrison left her office, Helen looked out the window at the city below and thought about chance and fate and the strange ways that life connects people. She had built Vilmont Industries from the ground up over 15 years, turning it into one of the most successful manufacturing companies in the region, and in that time she had made countless hiring decisions, promoted dozens of employees, and fired more than a few. But this felt different. This felt like an opportunity to align her company's actions with the values she claimed to espouse. And if it also happened to repay a debt to the man who had helped her in her most vulnerable moment, then that was just good business. Jasper was sitting at his kitchen table that afternoon, reviewing his bank account and trying to figure out how to make his savings stretch for another month when his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but he answered anyway, hoping it might be a response to one of his many job applications. Mr. Tate. This is Daniel Morrison from Vilmont Industries Human Resources, the voice on the other end said, and Jasper felt his stomach drop because he could not imagine why they would be calling unless it was about paperwork for his termination. Yes, this is Jasper, he said cautiously. Mr. Tate, I am calling to inform you that your termination has been rescinded. Morrison continued, and Jasper felt the world tilt. You are being reinstated with full back pay, effective immediately, and additionally, Miss Cross, the CEO of Vilmont Industries, would like to offer you a new position as her executive assistant. This would come with a substantial increase in salary, full benefits, and a direct reporting relationship to Miss Cross herself. Jasper sat in stunned silence, trying to process what he was hearing. This had to be a mistake or a prank, because things like this did not happen in real life. Mr. Tate, are you still there? Morrison asked. Yes, I am here. Jasper stammered. I do not understand. Why would the CEO want me as her assistant? I work in a warehouse. I worked in a warehouse. I do not have any experience with that kind of job. Miss Cross specifically requested you, Morrison said, and Jasper could hear the confusion in the HR director's voice as well. Apparently you helped her during a personal emergency, and she was very impressed with your character and judgment. She believes you would be an excellent addition to her executive team. Realization dawned on Jasper, like the sun breaking through clouds. Helen Cross, the woman I helped get to the hospital. She is the CEO of Vilmont Industries. Yes, Mr. Tate. That is correct, Morrison confirmed, and she wants to offer you this opportunity. If you are interested, the salary would be $90,000 annually with full health and dental coverage, retirement benefits, and 4 weeks of paid vacation to start. Jasper's head was spinning. $90,000 was more than triple what he had been making in the warehouse. It was life-changing money, the kind of salary that would mean he could give Emma the stability and opportunities he had always wanted for her. But it was also terrifying because he had no idea how to be an executive assistant or whether he could possibly meet the expectations of someone at that level. Can I think about it? Jasper asked, though he already knew what his answer would be. Of course, Morrison said, though. Miss Cross was hoping you could start as soon as possible. Perhaps you could come in tomorrow to discuss the details and meet with her directly tomorrow. Jasper repeated, yes, I can do that. What time? 10 o'clock in the executive offices on the 15th floor. Morrison said, just give your name to security, and they will direct you. When Jasper hung up the phone, he sat motionless for several minutes, trying to convince himself that the conversation had actually happened, that his life had just taken an impossible turn from fired warehouse worker to executive assistant in the span of 48 hours, and all because he had stopped to help someone in the rain. That night, after Emma was asleep, Jasper stood in his daughter's doorway watching her breathe softly in the glow of her nightlight, and he felt tears prick his eyes because for the first time in years, he felt like maybe things were going to be okay, maybe his choice to stop, maybe his decision to help a stranger despite the cost was not going to result in disaster after all. Maybe sometimes the universe did reward people for doing the right thing. The next morning, Jasper put on his only suit, which was several years old and a bit tight around the shoulders, and drove to Vilmont Industries feeling more nervous than he had on his first day of work in the warehouse. The executive offices were on the 15th floor in a part of the building he had never visited before, with thick carpets and modern art on the walls, and assistants who looked up from sleek computers as he approached. "I am here to see Miss Cross," Jasper said to the receptionist at the main desk. "My name is Jasper Tate. I have a 10 o'clock appointment." The receptionist smiled warmly. "Yes. Mr. Tate, she is expecting you. Please follow me." Jasper was led down a corridor lined with glass-walled conference rooms where people in expensive suits were having important-looking meetings, and he felt increasingly out of place. But then they arrived at a set of double doors, and the receptionist knocked once before opening them to reveal a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Miss Cross, Mr. Tate is here," the receptionist announced. Helen Cross stood up from behind her desk, and Jasper was struck by how different she looked from the desperate, rain-soaked woman he had helped 2 days ago. Now she was polished and professional in a dark suit, her hair pulled back and her expression confident, but when she smiled at him, he saw the same warmth in her eyes. "Jasper," she said, coming around the desk to shake his, "and thank you so much for coming. Please sit down." They settled into chairs by the window, and Helen looked at him with genuine appreciation. "I wanted to meet with you personally to thank you for what you did the other morning and to apologize for what happened afterward. I had no idea that helping me would cost you your job. If I had known, I would have intervened immediately." "You do not need to apologize," Jasper said. Finding his voice, "I chose to stop, and I would make the same choice again. I am just glad you and your baby are okay." "We are doing wonderfully thanks to you," Helen said. "And that is exactly why I wanted to offer you this position, Jasper. You demonstrated qualities that are incredibly rare in my experience: compassion, courage, and selflessness. Those are the kinds of values I want in the people closest to me, the people I trust to help run this company." "I appreciate that," Miss Cross, Jasper said hesitantly. "But I have to be honest, I do not have any experience as an executive assistant. I am not even sure I know what the job entails." "That is okay," Helen said, leaning forward. "I am not looking for someone with a traditional background. I can teach you the technical aspects of the role. What I cannot teach is character and integrity. You already have those, and that is what matters most to me. You will learn the rest." They spent the next hour discussing the details of the position, and Helen explained that she needed someone who could manage her schedule, coordinate with department heads, handle confidential information, and serve as a liaison between her office and the rest of the company. It was a lot of responsibility, but Helen made it clear that she would provide training and support, and that she believed Jasper was capable of rising to the challenge. By the time Jasper left the office that morning, he had accepted the position, and he walked back to his car feeling like he was living in someone else's life. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma's school, asking him to bring a permission slip he had forgotten, and Jasper smiled because that mundane little reminder grounded him and proved that this was real. This was his life, and it was changing in ways he never could have imagined. Over the following weeks, Jasper threw himself into learning his new role, and Helen was patient and supportive, guiding him through the complexities of executive operations and introducing him to key personnel. And Jasper discovered that many of the skills that had served him well in the warehouse, attention to detail, reliability, problem-solving, also served him well in his new position. He learned quickly, and Helen began to trust him with increasingly important tasks. Word spread through the company about the warehouse worker who had been promoted to the executive suite, and reactions were mixed. Some people were inspired by the story, seeing it as proof that good deeds were rewarded and that the company valued character. Others were skeptical, questioning whether Jasper had the qualifications for such an important role, but Helen made it clear that she had full confidence in her decision, and gradually, As Jasper proved himself capable and competent, the skepticism faded. For Jasper, the change was profound. Not just financially, though. The new salary meant he could move Emma to a better neighborhood and enroll her in activities she had always wanted to try. But also, psychologically, he felt valued and respected in a way he never had before Helen treated him as a trusted partner, not just an employee, and she sought his input on decisions that affected thousands of people. And Jasper found himself growing into the role, discovering capabilities and confidence he had not known he possessed. One afternoon, several months after starting his new position, Jasper was reviewing quarterly reports in Helen's office when she looked up from her computer and smiled at him. "You know, when I offered you this job, I thought I was doing you a favor," Helen said, "but the truth is you have become indispensable, Jasper. You bring a perspective to this company that no one else does, and you remind me every day why we do this work, not just for profits, but for the people who depend on us." Jasper felt his face flush, with embarrassment but also with pride. "I am just grateful for the opportunity. Miss Cross," he said, "you took a chance on someone who had no business being in this office, and you changed my life. We changed each other's lives." Helen corrected, "And you have earned every bit of success you have had here." And she meant it, because Jasper's presence had influenced her leadership style, making her more attuned to the human side of business, more willing to consider the stories behind the statistics, and Vilmont Industries was becoming a better company because of it. That evening, Jasper picked up Emma from her new after-school art program, something they could finally afford. And as they drove home, she chattered excitedly about the painting she was working on, and Jasper listened with a full heart, thinking about how a single decision made on a rainy morning had led to all of this. And he thought about the pregnant woman he had helped, not knowing who she was, not expecting anything in return, just doing what felt right. And he realized that maybe the lesson was not that good deeds always get rewarded, but that when you act with integrity and compassion, you become the kind of person who is ready for opportunities when they come. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe notices, and those opportunities do come in the most unexpected and beautiful ways, proving that kindness is never wasted, even when it seems to cost everything. Because what looks like an ending can actually be a beginning, and what feels like a loss can transform into a gift beyond measure. And Jasper Tate, who had simply wanted to help someone in need, had discovered that the greatest return on investment anyone can make is in the currency of human decency. Because that is what truly changes lives, not just for the person receiving the kindness, but for the person giving it as well.